Maybe some more folks need to be on this side. Even it out. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Happy Friday, all.
Happy Friday. That's right. Right. Okay. Y'all ready? Yeah. Okay, so my name is Van Turner, V-A-N-T-U-R-N-E-R. I'm the president of Memphis Greenspace, Inc. And we're happy to have y'all here with us today. Joining me are my board members, and I would like to introduce them and allow them to have a word at some point if they would like to. We do actually have a board, and I want to make sure you all are reintroduced to our board of directors. So we have Janique Bird, who's the secretary for Memphis Greenspace. We have Luther Mercer, who's the vice president for Memphis Greenspace, and we have attorney Malcolm Futhu, who's also on the board, and that comprises the board of Memphis Greenspace, Inc. And we're here today to announce something that is very special for us and hopefully for you all. As you all know, on December 20th, 2017, Memphis Greenspace received ownership of these two parks, and that evening at 9:01 p.m. we were able to safely and carefully remove the monument of Nathan B. Forrest off the pedestal, which was right behind us. And then we went down to Memphis Park and we were able to remove two Confederate monuments at Memphis Park. The most prominent one was that of Jefferson Davis, who was the former president of the Confederacy. After that time, as you know, we had to house those monuments. Lawsuits ensued, and we were successful in those lawsuits in the Davidson County Chancery Court, which was appealed to the Court of Appeals. We were successful there, and the Tennessee Supreme Court denied certiorari. All along the whole time, Mr. Miller and I and our wonderful attorneys were working together to try to reach a resolution, and we were able to reach a resolution. I would like to introduce the attorneys as well. We have Mr. Chris Vescovo with the law firm of Lewis Thomason, and we have Mr. Isaac Q, who's also with the law firm of Lewis Thomason, and we acknowledge Marty Regan, who's our general counsel for Memphis Greenspace, Inc. Also, I think we're going to be joined by the former city attorney, Bruce McMullen. He's not here yet, but we want to give a hat tip to him. Alan Wade, who is the attorney for city council, and we want to acknowledge them as well. And we cannot go any further without acknowledging Mayor Jim Strickland. Mayor Jim Strickland signed the papers which allowed the parks to be transferred to us, and we want to acknowledge him as well. All along this time, there have been protests and there have been things which have been done in the park, and those who have gone on before us, we want to acknowledge former Judge DeArmy Bailey, who's passed, his brother Commissioner Walter Bailey, Dr. Lasima Gray, and then of course we acknowledge Taking Down 901 and the efforts that they provided in making sure we were to arrive to this day. And so with that being said, the announcement that we have to make today is that the remains of General Nathan B. Forrest and the remains of his wife, Mary Forrest, have been safely removed from this location. They are no longer here. Those remains were discovered, and get this, the remains were discovered on Monday, June 7th, 2021 at 9:01 a.m. And Mr. Taylor, who is the funeral director, current election commissioner and former city councilman and former county commissioner, will tell you a little bit about that story. So again, the remains of Nathan B. Forrest and his wife Mary Forrest were discovered here. They reached that location where the remains are in the vault at 9:01 a.m. this past Monday. And I'll just finish up with this, and we'll come and have some Q&A, and we'll allow Mr. Miller to read a statement from the family, the Forrest family, as well as the sons of the Confederate Veterans, who we've been working with to get this resolved. But we want to allow this accomplishment today to be an example of what we can accomplish here in this city. Do Mr. Miller and I agree on everything? No. We'll be the first to admit that. But can we work together to get a job done which moves the city forward? The answer to that is yes. So whether it comes to dealing with poverty in our community, crime in our community, jobs in our community, or just where do we go from here, we would hope that the example shown here with the safe removal of the monuments and the safe removal of the remains will serve as an example for what we can do to move this city forward. And I think that this is something that we should all really study and really focus on and moving Memphis forward. This is a great city. We all love it, and we want the best for this city. Lee and I want the best for this city, and so I'm glad to have worked with him to get this job done. And with that being said, I'll allow him to have a few words. Mr. Miller.
All right. Thank you, Van. I want to thank Van for his cooperation and also recognize our Forrest family attorney, Edward Phillips, who was unable to be here today, but worked with Chris and Isaac on this through the court cases and the ultimate settlement that we all agreed upon as the best resolution for this issue. Glad we could work together and ultimately cooperate, reach a settlement that was happy to all of us, happy to the family, happy to the Sons of Confederate Veterans, and ultimately has led to this point where we can transfer the remains of General and Mrs. Forrest to another appropriate location. I'll pass this out to y'all later, but the Forrest family is pleased that we were able to do this. The remains are in a undisclosed location right now, and they will then be transferred later on to their new resting place, which will be closer to his boyhood home, his birthplace in Middle Tennessee. So thank y'all for being here. We think General Forrest, of course, is a great Memphian. He's done a lot for the city, famous man, but a big active park like this is probably not the place for him. So we're glad that General Forrest and Ms. Forrest could be removed and placed in a more appropriate place. Anybody have any questions at the moment?
We'll listen to others talk in with time.
Okay.
Is anybody from the board? All right, we're going to allow Mr. Taylor to come up, who owns a funeral home, and we'll let him give you a few more of the details of what he can share about the removal. Mr. Brent Taylor.
All right, thank you, Van. Thank you, Lee. I first want to start by thanking several people that were involved in this process. Obviously, first, the descendants of the Forrest family. Secondly, it would be the Sons of Confederate Veterans. And third, Memphis Greenspace for allowing me to participate in this project. I will tell you, as everyone up here, I love Memphis. I'm not a native Memphian, but I will tell you I got here as quick as I could. And I have served in many capacities here in Memphis. And what I have learned in serving those capacities is that Memphis is really unlike many other cities. It's really a gritty river town that has a lot of soul. Unlike Nashville or even Atlanta or Dallas, what I call plastic cities, a lot of shiny glass and steel skyscrapers, Memphis still has its soul because we've got many of our old historic buildings downtown, and it is really just a gritty river town with a lot of soul. And as I mentioned, I've served a lot of capacity. I've been a city councilman, been a county commissioner, currently an election chairman of the election commission. But I will tell you, this particular role that I'm playing, I think, is probably the most important role that I've played. Because Memphis, this issue really highlights that there are two communities here in Memphis, and Memphis is really a clash of two cultures. We've got two communities who really get along better and moving our city forward than many cities across the country. So this issue had the potential to tear us apart rather than bring us together. I say it's probably one of the most important roles I've participated in because I find myself in the middle of the two communities surrounding this monument and the graves of General Forrest and his wife. How we move forward is critically important. We can do it in a way that moves Memphis forward, or we could do it in a way that continues to tear us apart. And my role here today is, by law, a licensed funeral director has to be in charge of the disinterment and reinterment. So that's my role here today. And it's a historic event, it's a historic role, and it's one that we want to get right. And it couldn't be done right if it weren't for the leadership of Lee Miller and Van Turner, working together to make sure that this comes off without a lot of the violence that we've seen in other cities. So again, I want to thank Commissioner Turner. I want to thank Lee Miller with Sons of Confederate Veterans for allowing me to be a part of this process. And as long as I'm involved, I can assure you it will be done in a respectful and dignified way. So with that, thank you.
Very good. Thank you. We'll take questions here, but I will point out that similar to what was done down at Memphis Park, dinner and blunt was a reason to kind of get things cleared up and have it in a position to where we could welcome the public. There was no coordination with Juneteenth and this. It just so happened that it occurred this way. And so now that we have the remains, we don't think that there would be a flashpoint, and so we're going to welcome the Juneteenth celebration here, which will happen in a matter of days. And so we're looking forward to that. With that being said, we'll take questions.
One, can anyone speak to the process? Because when we were here, when you began, you said it was like 8 feet and then a 2-foot pedestal and all of that. And secondly, the future of this park. You said removing this opens up a new beginning. Can you speak to that and kicking it off with Juneteenth?
Yeah. Well, you know, hats off again to the team that Mr. Miller hired and to Mr. Taylor. You know, the records from the burial were old, and so there was sort of approximation. So we knew generally where the remains were and where the tomb was, but it took some time to just get down there and see. And again, they were going in, doing that process. And again, at 9:01 this past Monday, they hit something which Mr. Taylor knew was something of the past, and this is where the crypts were. And so I'll bring him up in a second to give you a little more details about the depth and all of that. Where we go forward is where we go forward as a city. This park is symbolic of Memphis. It has everything Memphis has. It has the clash between the old and the new. It has the clash between Nathan B. Forrest high on the pedestal, but where is he overlooking? He's overlooking Union Avenue, his adversary during the war, right? It has the clash of course, we saw the issue that happened earlier between two passionate people who got into it at the park, and we all know that story, no need to recount that. And so everything that is Memphis is right here in this park, and as Brent said, if we can get this park right, we can get this city right. Yeah, we come from two different cultures, from Boxtown and Germantown, but we can still get along, we can still get together, we can have our young people get together, and we can move this city forward, because, you know, the reality of it is if we don't come together, we won't have the city that we all love. And so I think this has hopefully brought us together. One reason we signed the documents to remove the monuments was because we were commemorating MLK 50 and the death of Dr. King 50 years later. And so I think that Dr. King would perhaps be looking down at this moment smiling, because he preached unity, he preached loving your fellow man and woman based on the content of the character, not the color of the skin. I think what you saw here today was an example of us doing that to move the city forward. And Brent, do you want to give the depth or any talk on that?
I'll say a few words and I'll let Mr. Miller speak to this as well. You know, as Van said, we were working with a lot of old records. There's no one alive today that knows exactly what transpired and where Mr. and Ms. Forrest were buried initially here in the park. So we were going with a lot of assumptions. I know Mr. Miller and his team did countless hours of research with news accounts, newspaper clippings, and searching for old records, trying to determine exactly the location of the remains. We went into this with an assumption that they were directly beneath the pedestal. That's what we thought until Monday. And when we were doing some of the excavation work, we uncovered what is referred to as a Victorian cradle. And you'll see them in a lot of old cemeteries where it's a granite, looks like a bathtub, about the size of a bathtub, and people would plant flowers in it. They unearthed that, and the construction crew, excavation crew, did not know exactly what that was. I was on site, recognized it immediately. We stopped the excavation, did a probe just beneath where that Victorian cradle was, and we determined that we had reasonable expectations that the vaults were directly beneath there. We continued to work a little bit more, and that's when we uncovered both Mr. and Ms. General Forrest and his wife's vaults. And from there, it really became more almost like an archaeological excavation site so that we could preserve the remains and get them removed safely and in a dignified way. So with that, I'll let Mr. Miller, if he's got anything further he'd like to add to that.
Sure, you'd mentioned it, the 8 feet down. The plaza is 2 feet off the ground. Because unfortunately, nobody left us architectural plans or diagrams or anything about how it was here. So we had to research into newspaper accounts, the minutes of the Forest Monument Association, along with the Sons of Confederate Veterans, and diaries and letters of people who were witnesses who were here to try and determine the exact location. And everyone said, yes, it's under the pedestal or it's under the plaza. The plaza is 2 feet high. Typically, a grave is going to be 6 feet below ground level. One report said it was they were 2 feet underground, and then 6 feet below that. That's where the 8 feet came from, and actually it was 10 feet below the plaza. So, not knowing, we were just with Brent just discovering an archaeological find and trying to do that as reverently as possible because we knew it was a cemetery. But that's what the projections were of why it was going to be several weeks, and we're still not done. There's still a lot of work to do, but it was just a tedious process because we weren't exactly sure where we were going to start with.
Brent, even in a normal case, there are procedures guaranteed to preserve dignity and privacy in that. Was that why there wasn't any notice about this?
Well,
once they were discovered?
My responsibility was to disinter and protect and shelter the remains. I'm not in charge of anything else other than that, so it was not my place to do that. However, let me just say, and I'll let Mr. Miller, because I know he was in charge of the project site here.
Standing next to you.
Standing next to me the entire time. But I think one of the reasons there was a delay is that we went through painstaking detail to ensure that we could collect the remains and do it in a dignified way. And I think the lapse in time from Monday until today was there's still work going on, and we wanted to make sure that we didn't uncover any additional artifacts that would need to remain with the general and his wife. And so I think that's why there was a delay in notifying the public so that we would have time to continue our work in a way that would perhaps yield additional artifacts so that we could preserve those and make sure they remain with the general and his wife. Mr. Miller?
Question for you: when you're talking about the dignity of this, were the vaults just removed, or did anyone do anything more to actually see the remains and verify?
The vaults remain. What we were able to recover were General Forrest's casket came out intact. Mrs. Forrest's casket was originally constructed of wood. It had long since lost its integrity. So I provided a temporary casket. We lowered the temporary casket so we could transfer her remains into the temporary casket, and then we removed both the general and his wife to an undisclosed location. Mr. Miller, you have anything to add to that?
No, that's entirely correct.
So, Mr. Miller, what can you tell us now? What's the plan then for getting it to the museum, and is the monument going to be put above and the gravesite below, or what's the plan now?
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, the remains will be stored in I guess you'd say a sterile location, preserved and taken care of until we have the new monument area constructed in Middle Tennessee. The new graves will be built. They will be reinterred up there, and then the statue, the monument, will go as well. So it will all be reconstituted just as it was here. So it will be just like the original grave site here.
How will this go before the Juneteenth next Saturday? Do you all know kind of the construction site, what people can maybe expect on Juneteenth?
Yeah. So apparently I think they're going to probably still be having to do a little work here. The big thing is that the bodies and the remains have respectfully been removed, which was key. And so what we'll do is that privacy fence will remain, and we'll probably put some type of marker here, and what's occurring with Juneteenth will all go from this point forward, and they'll have the full width and full length of the park. and we'll allow this process to continue, and we'll make sure that we have the proper security. This park is huge, and it's much larger than the church park to some extent, where the Juneteenth celebration was before now. So I think with the pavilion and with the width of the park, we can have that event take place going forward and still allow this work to take place behind us.
When you anticipate this will kind of all be gone and the park will kind of have its new phase, new look? The rough timeline of that?
That's your question. I think
well,
you said when's it going to be developed? So.
Yeah, so when the work here should be finished
by July 1st.
By July 1st?
Yes.
And then, we'll begin work on what else comes here. I've had many, as you can imagine, recommendations from, a Dr. King spot, Ida B. Wells, so on and so forth. I think what we want now is just for this park to be a park, and for you to enjoy the park like you enjoy other parks, and not have any more symbolism here for just a little while. Let's just let the park breathe. Let people enjoy the park. Let's relax a little bit. Let's enjoy the park, the green space, and maybe on down the road we'll see what comes of this. It's right next to the medical school. The park downtown is right next to the law school, so hopefully this will be a good spot for medical students and the law students to enjoy for a little while.
Mr. Miller, I have a question for you.
Yes, ma'am.
The big part of this with the Forrest family was that this was done respectfully and they could be in a place where, they were safe. 9/11 Monday, when you guys made this discovery and you told them, just what was their reaction? Because I know this has been emotional for them as well.
I'm not sure about your question. We didn't inform 901 or anybody.
No. When you made the discovery at 9/11 Monday and you told the family, what was their reaction?
Yes. It kind of relief that they were actually where they were supposed to be, and that the vaults were intact, and so the family was very pleased that it had gone so well, and the entire process has gone so well too. So we've been in close contact with the family. Some of them have been here in addition to myself, so they were glad to see this all taking place securely and reverently as it was. I might also mention, you mentioned the fence there. Besides being a security fence, it's actually a safety fence, because as you see, we've got heavy equipment up there, and so it's, as a construction site, the fence is a safety fence to just keep others from wandering in and getting hurt. You'll see our men wearing hard hats and everything just like they're supposed to. So that's the focus of the fence there, is just for safety purposes.
What kind of extra work will be done between now and July 1st? What are some of the final things you all have to do now that the remains have been taken?
One of the main things surrounding the pedestal and the statue was the plaza, with the benches and the steps and things like that, which had just tremendous blocks of we call granite, but it's actually Tennessee limestone. The smallest piece of that is 3,600 pounds. So it's very heavy material. So we have to disassemble the entire plaza, and that just takes a long time. So that's what's going to occupy our next 2 weeks, is continuing the disassembly of the plaza for the monument.
What has this been like for you all after years and years back and forth? This final process. What have these last couple of weeks been? You two, Van, just these last couple of weeks. What is this kind of been running through your mind as this final chapter kind of comes to a close?
Well, I guess it started back when we had serious discussions about a settlement for what we should do, and worked very well together. Van and I have talked quite a bit, and of course with the Chris and Isaac and our attorneys about. So this has been a process ongoing for a while, and then we formulated a plan to have the monument removed, and we're just waiting on good weather. As Van said, it was just coincidence that this occurred in June, but when you're doing construction, doing building and things like that, you got to try to peg it so it's not raining on you to do that. So that's what the plan was, to start now to do this. So that's how that developed.
And I'll be honest with you, COVID-19 did affect us.
Oh, yes.
Because, this took a court process in Chancery Court. This was actually the last ruling of Chancellor Walter Evans. The last order that Chancellor Evans signed was the order that allowed us to come in and disinter the remains. And so we probably would have been here last year had COVID-19 not hit, because the courts were shut down and we needed the courts to get this process completed. So that's why it's taking so long. And we're just relieved. This has been 4 years of my life, 4 years of our lives. And so we've lived with this, been concerned with it, and have been dealing with keeping the lights on and the grass cut and the flag done. That flag was torn up and it was crazy. And most of the complaints I got was because the flag was tore up. So we had to hire a team to go in and replace the flag. I think we've had to replace it twice. So, just dealing with a park. I went to school to be a lawyer, not to be a park monitor. So this has been new territory for us all, and I'm happy to see this day here. This is a good day for Memphis. It's a good day for us. Hopefully it's a good day for you. And I think, again, this is symbolic of us moving forward to resolve some of the other issues we have in this community, whether it's crime, poverty, or making sure that our young people have opportunities here.
What does the future look like for this space?
So, right now we are going to, again, just allow it to be a park. I've received all kind of things about what this should look like, and we're just going to meet as a board and see what's best, and we'll see. So who knows what this becomes? We're going to really leave it up to the Memphians and the Shelby Countyans who, wanted this space to be just a park and to be free and clear. And we'll take recommendations from everyone. But right now, we'll probably repave it over. And if you've seen what was done at Memphis Park, it's just a flat spot now where they have seats out and tables out, and people just can enjoy lunch there. And that'll probably be what we start this off as, and we'll see where it takes us from there.
Quick question: this morning we saw a big semi that looked like it had, I don't know, a ton of concrete or something on it. Could you explain what exactly that was? Was that some of the stuff you guys were dismantling? What was that?
Yeah. Sure. The semi you saw leaving had some of the granite blocks, or actually limestone blocks, on it, and there was probably 6 pallets of that. But that's those big blocks are part of the monument, part of the plaza, the frame surrounding the plaza. So that was just them being moved away.
Without us being able to see what exactly you guys pulled up, I know you talked a little bit about what the Marianne's casket looked like, but just can you kind of describe what it is and what it looked like when you were able to figure out everything that you
They look like caskets. That was pretty much it. No, we want to do this in a very reverent manner to honor the general and his wife, and so we didn't want anybody filming it, certainly, and just did it privately among those involved. So it was just just like a funeral.
I'm curious, is anybody up here aware of any other disinterment of sort of this magnitude? Was there like a playbook to follow for doing this, or?
No, it's very rare that you have to disinter an American general like we have here. But of course, Mr. Taylor there is a well-versed professional and state-certified funeral director. He knew what, and other disinterments have happened before. This one just happened to be one of the most famous Civil War veterans and Memphians around. So certainly with the family present, and just with any ex-Mason, you want to be very careful and respectful, and that was the point of doing this. Just
in
keep in mind.
1905, when Forrest and his wife were reinterred the first time, his son William was in attendance. Were descendants of Nathan Bedford Forrest and Marianne in attendance when the caskets were unearthed?
Yes.
Did we see a full circle moment?
Yes. Oh, yes. Yes. So his great-great-grandson was in attendance when this happened, and I was there, of course, as well. I'm a descendant of General Forrest's family also.
And a quick follow-up, Mr. Millard, do you know of any other Confederate figures that have been reinterred twice?
No. There have been, of course, many other veterans been reinterred twice, but no one of this magnitude. And I would like to point out one little interesting fact. He was buried in the 1800s. General Forrest died in 1877, reinterred in the 1900s, 1904, and now reinterred a second time in the 3rd century, 2021. never happened before either.
Do you have any idea when the monument near Columbia, Tennessee will be finalized? Is there a rough timeline of that?
Towards the end of the year, I expect. As you've seen, it's a big process to take one apart, and then we've got to, of course, figure out how to put it back together correctly and precisely as it was here. I think this one was put together to withstand a nuclear attack. That it was very well put together. They were very serious about putting this monument together and the graves underneath as well. So we want to be just as careful and precise in reassembling it later on.
Just about the Juneteenth celebration, I know you guys kind of mentioned this was a coincidence of weather and court proceedings.
Right.
But just being able to kind of have that, and just for, I guess, lapsing just a couple of weeks in between the final excavation and the celebration, we're coming off of COVID, we're coming at a year of protests, how we have one full circle moment with the descendants here, does this feel a little full circle as well?
Yeah. Interestingly enough, Juneteenth was at the church part, which was named after Robert Church. And Robert Church bought the first bonds back at the turn of the last century, well, I think the century before that, in the 1800s, in order to get Memphis back going again, because yellow fever had wiped Memphis out. And so Robert Church was a rich African-American business owner back then, and he bought the first bonds to really save Memphis, if you will. And so Juneteenth was in the church part, symbolic of what he meant and what he did for the city. And so it's full circle that now we bring it here, and it's a larger space, and it's a space which to some was very painful for my father and those who grew up in the Jim Crow segregated South and Jim Crow Memphis, who couldn't really walk on this park unless accompanied by a white person. And yet he recounted to me that his mother was paying taxes to keep the park up, yet he couldn't enjoy the park as a black young Memphian in the 60s when he was growing up here. So it's full circle for a lot of people for many reasons. And so again, we wanted this process to be respectful, to be something that healed divisions. I think the Forrest family wanted the remains of their ancestor to rest in peace, because there was never going to be peace here. There were always going to be protests and rallies, and you were going to always have issues here. So I think they are now at a place where the remains will be safe and at peace. And then we, who were sort of against the monument and who continue to be against what the Confederacy stood for, will have peace as well, because this would be a park without that type of symbolism, and without that type of history presented in the way that it was presented. Again, Mr. Miller and I may agree on history, but what we can agree on is we're happy for this day. We're happy that we were able to get this done. His side is satisfied, our side is satisfied, and hopefully, again, this will be an example for Memphis to move forward in the future.
Question about the remains. With this kind of process, is there any type of testing that's done, or do you, based on the records and location, assume that you're supposed to have?
I think we got them.
Yeah. Yes. Well, we know who we have and who's who. Where General Forrest was, and as Mr. Taylor mentioned, there was that cradle that had N.B. Forrest on it, 1877, above his funeral vault. So that's the same one that they had at Elmwood when he was buried in 1877. So it was placed over his vault here. So we're pretty certain that that's the same General Forrest and Mrs. Forrest.
And there were some things that were discovered which will probably be revealed at a later time to suggest that it wasn't just folklore. I mean, there were real remains there.
What did the 901, did it mean anything to you? I don't know if you're a superstitious
Yeah.
person, serendipitous.
Yeah.
What did it mean to you?
This gentleman here called me this morning. I was speaking at John P. Freeman middle school graduation, and Brent called and said, "Man, I got something to tell you. It's almost like God ordained." I'm gonna recount what he said to me, and I didn't know what has happened. I got scared because so much has happened down here. I didn't know if the second Civil War had broken out or something. But he says, "Call me when you're free, no rush. Something I know you'll be interested in that I figured out that makes you go, God is really good." So this is from Mr. Taylor. And Mr. Taylor now on opposite political sides. He's a Republican, I'm a Democrat. But that doesn't mean anything when it comes to really bringing the city together and moving it forward. And so I'm happy for the relationship that we have. But when he said God is good, God really is good. This could have been a disaster. And it was on the line several times, not just what y'all saw 2 weeks ago, but at several points in time, this could have broken down and been a real issue for everyone. But it didn't. So thankful for all the prayers that we received. And I do think it was God ordained. And really, 901 means something. It means we have grit, it means we have grind, and it means that when we come together, we can get the job done. And so that's what this all symbolizes. So,
if I could just say one thing, the significance of 901 was not felt Monday. It was only looking back and trying to put the timeline together that I realized. And as a matter of fact, I read an article last night about I had forgotten that the statues came down at 901, which got me to thinking. So the significance was not felt of 901 Monday, and I just shared that with Van. I thought he might find that interesting because I look back, I could tell at what time I called my staff and knew a few minutes had elapsed, and it was approximately that 901, which I knew would be important. But while I'm here, let me just say this, and Van just alluded to it. This entire process could have gone terribly different. But it's because of the leadership of Mr. Miller and Mr. Turner that worked together, and we have not had the issues that other cities have had. And you see today, I mean, all sides here are happy at where we are, and that is no small feat. That makes my job all the more difficult because, just as I said earlier, I'm right in the middle between both communities. There is a community here that wishes Nathan Bedford Forrest and his wife to be removed because of the pain and agony that their presence continues to provide to them. There's also a community that believes that General Forrest and his wife were that he was an American general, an American hero, and deserves reverence and respect. And it's my job to walk that tightrope to ensure that both communities, at the end of this process, look back and say that we did this right, that both sides got exactly what they were looking for. And this process is not over. We've got a long way to go, but with the leadership of Mr. Miller leading us forward, we'll get there. And at the end of this issue, I think both communities are going to be satisfied. Last thing I'll say, and then I'll turn it back over to Van. Normally, I'm a funeral director for a particular family. In this particular case, I feel like I'm the funeral director for the city of Memphis to ensure that these remains are protected and treated with dignity and respect, and that both communities are served. And I'm hoping that I'll be able to achieve that. So, thank y'all.
Yes, very good.
okay, so we'll probably go ahead and wrap up here. Y'all come on in because we got to get a picture for ourselves. Oh, y'all got the pictures.
I'm sorry?
Can you spell your name for us?
Brent Taylor, Taylor.
Okay.
Brent Taylor, Taylor. If you forget that, there are a lot of negative articles that have been written by Jackson Baker in particular.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're going to call it. We appreciate it. If we have any further updates, we will make sure you know about it. Thank y'all so much for joining us. Right.
Thank you.
Good job. Thank you so much, Taylor.
Good to see you.